Miss Madison, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to see all of you here today and from so many different countries. I feel very grateful that we have such a multicultural and diverse group of educators. And I feel very privileged and honored to share with you just some techniques from my toolbox today. So let me get my screen started for you. All right. Perfect. All right. We'll get right into it this afternoon. So again, my name is Madison. I am, as our wonderful moderator introduced me, a English language fellow here in Cote d'Ivoire. And I'm very passionate about supporting teachers as well as students, but really teachers, because I feel that we have one of the hardest jobs, if not the hardest job, supporting and developing future generations and all the things that come with it. So I'm very happy to help you out, and we'll get started for today. So again, the title for this webinar is Vocabulary Games for the English Classroom. All right. So just to review our agenda for today, to give you a preview of where we're going. So we'll begin our workshop today with a short activation activity to get us warmed up and thinking about the topic, and also sharing some of our own experiences too. Then we'll get into defining exactly what is gamification of learning. Some of you might be familiar with this, or this might be a new term for you, but we'll start by just establishing a general definition so we're all on the same page. Then we will explore the benefits of using games in the classroom, and specifically focusing on English language learners. And then kind of for the second half of my presentation today, I'll share with you 4 different games that I like to do. And I try to choose these games that are most importantly low resource and no technology. So all of these games today are not going to require any technology. Some schools may be very fortunate, and there's so many awesome games to use that with tech, like Kahoot and Blooket. But for today, I wanted to make this super adaptable for different ages or different contexts, or even just to give you something if you have like 5 minutes at the end of class and you're like, oh no, what do I do? You can pull out one of these games and just kind of occupy those last few minutes so the class doesn't go into chaos. So we'll go through 4 games. And then at the final today, we will do just sort of a reflection and make a connection with our own classrooms. All right, so let's get started with our activation activity. So what are some activities that you do to teach or review vocabulary? So what I want you to do is go into your prior knowledge, just like we need to do with our students. Go into your prior knowledge and share some of those activities that you like to do already with your students. It doesn't have to be a game. It can be, matching activities, close activities, anything that you want to share to support your colleagues and get your background knowledge out. So I'll give you a couple moments to share in the chat box. Great. There's some crosswords, word wall. I love word wall. Using puzzles. That's so good. Excellent. Some of you are using Kahoot. That's a great way to play some games. Great. Awesome. Those are some great ideas. Flashcards, beautiful. Yes. Concept maps, word webs. Good, good. Excellent. These are all wonderful. Riddles. I love it. These are great, great answers. And of course, I'm your facilitator for today. However, you have a wonderful group of educators here in this chat box. So I like to use these moments to share out because not only can you learn from me, but also you can learn everything from each other and different teachers from around the world. So these are some great, great ideas. Some songs, excellent, great. Wonderful. You're already doing an excellent job in your classroom, I can tell. All right. So let's get into defining what is the gamification of learning. What does this mean? So we'll start off with a definition. And again, this is going to be a moment for you to show me some of your knowledge. Before I tell you the definition, I'm going to ask you a multiple choice question. All right. So the question is, in the context of game-based learning, what does the term gamification refer to? All right, I'm going to give you 4 multiple choice. A, using actual video and other technology games for learning. B, incorporating game elements into non-game context. C, teaching traditional subjects without any game involvement. Or D, discouraging the use of technology in place of traditional games in the classroom. All right, take a moment, think about the 4 answer choices, and write the letter of which answer you think it is in the chat box. And if you don't know, that's okay. Just take a guess. That's what I like to tell my students. Just make a guess. Good. I think I'm seeing a lot of the right answer popping up. Beautiful. Awesome. Excellent. So if you did choose answer B, or if that's what you're thinking, you are correct. So nice job with that. To go into our definition, to just elaborate a bit on that multiple choice question. So when we think about this gamification of learning, it's when we design as teachers an educational activity, but we include some type of game element into it. So that might be just the simple addition of points and teams. So we are breaking students up into teams and assigning points for different questions. Maybe we create badges, or there's like some type of leveling up if they earn a certain amount of points. But it's kind of incorporating, again, these elements of different games or sports into our learning activities in the classroom. I think most of you are quite familiar with that definition based on the multiple choice answers. And I just wanted to share this T-chart with you. When I was preparing for this webinar, I was doing a bit of research, and I just really loved the way that the author laid out this beautiful comparison of gaming and learning, and how when we look at this side by side, there truly are so many similarities. We could think about gaming as in traditional games or sports, but also video games as well can be included in that gaming sphere. And then on the other side, we have our learning, where we think about traditional classroom activities or educational objectives. And when we see these two side by side, I think it is a great visual or a great representation that gaming and learning really have so many similarities. And therefore, we should leverage using games in order to fulfill those learning objectives, because they are quite linked in similarity. So I just thought that it was kind of nice to see such a comparison about these two together laid out side by side. And I wanted to share that with you. All right. Again, one of my favorite things to do with my students is to do a bit of a prediction task. Again, building on background knowledge, or just making a guess. So my prediction for you is, what are some of the benefits of using games in the classroom? And think about this both for the students and for the teachers. And any of your ideas, please do share in the chat box, again, so we can learn from each other and just to, again, get us thinking about, continued thinking about this topic. I'll give you maybe about 30 seconds to a minute, just fire off some of those ideas. I'll take a look. Good, critical thinking as icebreakers, wonderful. Beautiful, breaking the monotony, excuse me, of talking. Yeah, good. Good, excellent. Yes, that's a great answer, Doreen. I like that word, competitive. I love the use of soft skills. Excellent. Good. Yeah, I think an unusual way or a creative way. Great, great idea. Good. Encouraging creativity. Yeah, and teachers also don't get bored. I love that. Yeah, sometimes as teachers, especially if we are in the same grade or doing the same type of textbook content, we can find ourselves getting a bit bored. So games can also energize and keep us teachers cognitively engaged. Excellent, beautiful. Love it, love it. These are all great answers. Honestly, I'm glad I'm getting your prior knowledge because you know a lot about this already. It's great. Excellent. So many good answers. So I'm just gonna build off of your answers. But you had so many of them, which I'm gonna talk about, and I'm just gonna elaborate a little bit on those. But it looks like all of the educators here, you have a lot of knowledge about the pedagogical benefits. So I'm gonna build off of your answers, maybe add some more in there too. All right. So when we think about the benefits of using games, firstly, I think someone in the chat mentioned this is student-centered and student-focused teaching, right? Especially with our English language learners, we want to be designing activities which are focusing on the student doing the most work, right? We do the work in our lesson planning, so therefore the students are working hard in class and we are just the facilitator and the guider or the moderator. So using games puts students at the front and center, and we are just the almost arbitrator or referee in this sense. I think someone mentioned the comment, which I really loved, which was, so teachers don't get bored. So of course, we want to create routine, right? Our students need routine, and we want to build that aspect of routine to create safe and predictable classroom environments. However, once we get into our lessons and we've created that kind of rapport and dynamic in our classroom, it's important that we use a variety of different interaction strategies or patterns and different instructional strategies. So we can think of games as kind of bringing in some variety and allowing something maybe different to happen to keep students on their toes, to keep them engaged, and just to, stimulate different types of learners in our classroom, and to keep it more exciting, I would say too. Another benefit, which is not always thought about, but games are a wonderful moment for you as the teacher to do a little bit of informal assessment. In some of the games that I'm going to show you today, it can provide you with a moment to kind of take a look at how your class is doing and being able to say, I thought that they had mastered that, but based on this game and how they struggled to answer some of those questions, I think I need to reteach or I need to review. So it can give you information about the class as a whole, or it can also give you information about particular students, both their academic abilities, but also maybe their social and emotional abilities. Seeing which students are working well with others, seeing which students are feeling maybe more courageous or more students who are more shy. And all of that information helps you better plan. It helps you better organize your classroom. So doing games can give you valuable informal data that can help you strategize and maybe plan differently. Also, I apologize. It is getting very dark in my room right now. I think it's because we're going to have a thunderstorm and it's going to rain, but don't worry, I'm still here and we'll keep on going. So the next benefit, I think someone mentioned this, was games improve student attention, engagement, and motivation. So I think there was a word shared in the chat box about competitive spirit, and leveraging that competitive spirit can really help capture students' attention. They're working towards a goal. They're coming together in order to maybe just win a game or earn a prize or just earn points towards something. So it does improve, I would say, student focus, because now there's a very concrete goal that we are working towards. And it can motivate that idea of competitive nature. And I think someone also shared this in the chat box, that not only are games great for building academic skills, but they also help with our students' creativity, right? Students need to solve problems and they need to work things out, usually in a group when we're playing some of these games. So not only does it help students with maybe vocabulary knowledge or content knowledge, but also developing those critical thinking skills, as well as skills like communication and cooperation, which are part of maybe some of our social and emotional skills that we also have to teach as teachers. I think I mentioned that in the beginning of the webinar, being a teacher is an extremely hard job, because not only are you just a teacher, you are there also kind of as like a coach, as a psychologist, as a nurse. And part of that job of teaching is developing and educating our students on their social and emotional skills. So games can really help, where you can teach students, how to work through a problem together, or even simply how to be a good winner, or how to be if you don't win the competition, what's an appropriate way to express our emotions through disappointment or anger. So it can provide kind of a springboard into some other lessons about maybe social and emotional topics that you need to focus on in your class in order to help them develop that part of themselves as well. And then lastly, the wonderful things about games is that they are fun, right? Yes, learning, and we take our jobs very seriously as teachers, but we want to provide moments of levity. We want to give our students a moment to have a bit of fun in their learning, and some positive interactions with their classmates. And I think that that's a great reason to use them too. All right. I'm going to focus specifically on English language learners and some of the benefits, just expanding a little bit, and then we'll move forward. So specifically, I think someone in the chat mentioned this about reducing maybe anxiety or something about self-esteem. So if you are familiar with the research of Stephen Krashen, you might know this term, the affective filter. And our affective filter, we can think about that as kind of the anxiety or emotional feelings that we feel when we are speaking in our second or third or maybe fourth language. And how the feelings of anxiety or embarrassment can possibly affect our progress in our, L2 or L3, whichever language that we're learning. And so when we are playing games, this helps reduce that affective filter. It helps bring students into an environment where they're feeling a bit more comfortable, and it can help them to maybe take a risk or do something with their language because they are feeling more relaxed. They're feeling more just kind of happy in the moment, and they're willing to try something new or take a risk. Another great one, I think someone might have touched on it in the chat, was it increases our student talk time. So as language educators, we really want to give the floor to our students. We want to make sure that they are the ones practicing the language the most in the classroom. So using games and moments for interaction and competition, this really provides students with increased talk time and therefore facilitating and developing those speaking skills a bit better. And then lastly, more specifically to what we are going to talk about today, games can support in the vocabulary development, but also that idea of holding on to our vocabulary. And as we all know as teachers, our students really need to hear and experience language many times until it becomes their own, right? We can't just expect them to read a word just one singular time and have that committed to their own vocabulary. We have to provide them with many different opportunities to retain and practice with the language, so then they can adopt it and it becomes part of their own. All right, now we are going to get into our vocabulary game section. So now that we're going to take a little bit of a break from the pedagogical and theoretical side. And now I'm going to switch more into a practical focus of thinking about some really concrete games that you can take right away into your classroom. Some of these games, maybe some of you are familiar with, some of them might be new, but at the very least, I hope that if they are something that's familiar, maybe it inspires you to do them. And if they are something new, I hope that you can incorporate them into your classroom soon. All right, so the first game which I'm going to introduce to you is a vocabulary game that is called, I like to call it Create a Category, or we can also call it Word Sorts. All right, so you might have also heard of this too. Okay, so let's start off with the objective of the game. The objective is to require students to classify or sort words into different categories, hence that word category or sort in the title. So I'm going to walk you through the procedure. I'm going to show you an example, and then we're going to practice it together. So you have an opportunity to do this as if you were a student. And then after that, I'll give you a couple adaptations for the activity. All right, so for the procedure, ahead of time, you are going to prepare 10 to 20 vocabulary words before class. And you're going to choose these based on the unit that you're studying or something that you're doing already, or you might be in the middle of the unit and you're going to strategically choose 10 to 20 vocabulary words ahead of time before class. Then once you're in class, you're going to divide the students up into teams. Students are going to be given those 10 to 20 vocabulary words and a time limit, okay? These words can be written on small, tiny slips of paper, like that you cut out, one per group. You can write them on index cards, or if you don't have those supplies, you can put the word list onto the board. You can write it on the board, or you can project it onto the board. So if you have those supplies, great. If not, you can just list all 10 to 20 of those words on the board. In teams, students must sort the words into as many categories as they can. So you're going to give them the 10 to 20 words, and they're going to put them into, group them, classify them into different groups in a specific amount of time. So maybe it's 5 minutes or 2 minutes, however many words that you have. Students must give each category a name, so like a title, we could call it. And they also need to obviously write the words which belong into that category. At the end of the time, when time is finished, we go to each team, and each team is given 1 point per category which is created. All right. Let's look at an example. So again, I'm going to give you an example, and then we're going to practice this all together as a group, as if we were students. So I'll ask you to put your student hat on. All right, so imagine I could be a science teacher, or maybe I'm just an English language teacher, and we're focusing on animals, where our thematic unit is animals. And so I'm going to give my students this list of terms here, which you can see on the side in my T chart there. And I'm going to say, okay, you have 5 minutes in your groups to put these words into as many categories as you can. All right, time starts now. Students work together, they're grouping the terms. Okay, time is up. Now let's see what some of the examples could be. So, oh, okay. Animals that have 4 legs. Great. So they made a category with all the animals that have 4 legs. Oh, lives on land. Beautiful. Okay, so it looks like, yep, those are all correct. They live on land. Oh, beautiful category. One syllable words. Fish, shark, bird. Excellent. So students can get very creative with their categories. You can not only analyze kind of the semantic meaning, but also maybe the phonological or kind of how many syllables, morphological, I should say, of the different categories. And then last category this group came up with, excellent, lives in water. Okay, beautiful. That's very creative. They were looking at lives in land versus lives on water. There's definitely several more categories that we could make from these. And the opportunity is, again, you just don't give students any guidance, and it's for them to come up with it on their own. All right. I am going to, for our next activity, we're going to try it ourselves. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a category of some words. And what I want you to do is sort those words into the correct category, or excuse me, not correct category, your own categories, make your own groupings. What I'm also going to do next while you do this activity, it has just begun raining so badly. So while you do this activity, I'm going to turn my lights on. I'm going to shut my shutters because it is thunderstorming very bad in Côte d'Ivoire right now. So I'm going to give you a moment to do this activity. I'll pop off, come take a look in the chat, and then we'll continue on forward. All right. So again, you're going to use these words. You have about 1 minute and 30 seconds to do this activity. You're going to put them into any categories that you can make. The only stipulation is that there must be some connection between those categories. All right, and time starts now. I'll be right back in just 1 moment. All right, you got about 10 seconds. I'm just popping back. I turned my lights on. My glasses are a little wet because I just had to shut the shutters. Oh, okay, time is up. All right, let's take a look at some of these. Good, professions, natural objects in the sky. Good, things we can see at the sky at night. Solar systems, okay, good, bodies, excellent, great. Heavenly bodies, good, excellent, great answers. So just as a quick note, I think you gave me all of the categories, which I really love. If you were doing this in the classroom, you would want to make sure that students had the title of the category and then all of the words which properly correspond in that category. So not only do they give the title of the category, but they also must show, like in our last example, they must show the words that correspond in that category too. All right. But great job. Also, I really hope that my electricity stays on for you. I did not expect there to be quite a thunderstorm, but here we are, and that is rainy season in Cote d'Ivoire. All right, beautiful. We're just going to be flexible and keep going. All right, so excellent job with that. We're going to continue on forward, and I'm going to show you some adaptations. All right. So when we are doing this type of game, there's a couple of adaptations which we can do. So the game which we just did is called an open sort. And this is where you do not provide students with any categories. They make the categories and they sort the words into the corresponding ones which they create, right? So we saw that with our example, and we saw that also with the first one where I gave you the different animals that live on land, live on sea. So that's an example of something that's called an open sort. Another way which you can do this activity is called a closed sort. And this is when you, as the teacher, predetermine or decide on what the categories will be. So, for example, say I want to, if we look at this image over here, say I want my students to sort these vocabulary words into fruit or non-fruit. All right, so you give them the categories and then they sort the images or the words into the corresponding categories that you give to them. You could also do this another way, especially if you're teaching primary school or early learners. You can do this to distinguish for long vowel sounds or short vowel sounds. As you can see in the picture below, we have main, hail, pain, plain. So students would need to decide, what is that vowel sound that I hear? Is it a long A or a short A sound? And they would have to sort the words into the correct category based on the vowel sounds that they hear. And again, this is maybe better for early learners in our primary years where we're doing maybe more direct phonics instruction. But maybe it depends on your students. You could do this maybe second or third or even fourth grade as well if they're still developing those language skills. And then another idea for maybe some of our older students, or potentially if you teach university students, is you could give them a closed sort with vocabulary terms, and they need to sort the terms based on the register, right? So is it colloquial or slang English? Or is it a formal or an academic word? And so students can place words into the corresponding categories. If you were to do this as a game with closed sort, you could maybe do this against the clock, giving students a very short amount of time and seeing which team finishes first. Because with the closed sort, they already have the categories defined, so you can't really give them points off of the categories because you created them. But you could give them points on which team can finish first, and or which team finishes first and does it correctly. All of the ones are in the correct category. And then lastly, another adaptation is, say you are teaching pre-literate students, students that can't quite read or write yet, but they maybe have some oral skills. You could also use pictures. Just like you see on the screen, we have pictures of apple, oranges, hat. You could also, give students just pictures or display pictures, and then they can maybe make the groups out loud with you. This would be kind of a little less than a game activity, more of just like an oral communication activity. or they could physically move those pictures around and make different groupings. So this again would be more for our teachers who are working with students that are maybe lower literacy, but also it's just another adaptation that you can do with this activity. All right, I'm gonna share with you one more adaptation of this activity, which I have done personally myself, actually last semester. You can use this activity, of course, as a vocabulary game, but another way which I like to do this is with a novel study or any type of kind of literature that you might be doing in the classroom. So students are given a mix of terms or vocabulary words or that relate to the character, setting, plot, theme, or different events in the story or novel which you are reading as a class. And then students, again, same idea, they're going to create groups and create a label for that group based on the novel which you're reading. So just as a short example, I was teaching, I think it was mentioned that right now I'm working in Cote d'Ivoire, teaching in an English for academic purposes program. But one of the courses that I was assigned to teach was more of a literature focused course where we were looking at more of like short stories and novels. And so I chose this novel, A Long Walk to Water, which some of you may be familiar with. It's a wonderful story. If you haven't read it, it's a very inspiring story about a young man who grows up in Sudan, and he needs to flee Sudan due to the war. And it's his journey through that. And then ultimately, I won't spoil the end, but it's a wonderful book about resiliency and really just seeing a way that someone got through something extremely, extremely traumatizing and difficult. So if you see on the side of the screen here, I have created a list of terms that correspond to different aspects of this novel, wherever we were at in our reading. And then my instructions for my students were to, again, make groups or make categories with these words that have logical connections, so maybe they're making a group based on the theme or based on the characters or something that is connected within the story or the novel that we're reading. All right, we are going to push forward and go into my second game that I want to share with you today, which I think probably almost everyone is maybe familiar with tic-tac-toe, but I want to share with you how we can do it vocabulary style. All right. Great. So most of us know that the objective of tic-tac-toe is to get 3 X's or 3 O's in a row together, making a line of 3, giving us tic-tac-toe. How we do this for vocabulary, I'll give you a quick procedure and we'll go through this together. So firstly, you as the teacher, you're going to draw a classic 9-square tic-tac-toe board. And inside of each one of the squares, you're going to put a target vocabulary word or a target item which you are reviewing. I would like to say that this game is best done for a review. I wouldn't use it when you're introducing new vocabulary. The last game that I showed you, the word sorts, that one actually could be used at the beginning of a unit as like a pre-test assessment. But for this, I think it's best when it's a review game. Students already are familiar with the terms and it's just to refresh and review. So you've organized the students into two groups, and teams take turns choosing a square on the board and either defining the term, so giving a definition, or using the word in a sentence. Or maybe you require them to do both, right? So if we look at the board here, it looks like maybe they are learning words that correspond to some type of sport, right? So they'll have to define the word in the context that we learned it, and then you could either assign a bonus point, or it could just be for that one singular point to get the X, you could say. They have to use it in a sentence. So you as the teacher decide, you could just have them use it in a sentence, or you could have them define it, or you could make them do both. And then if they do both, they can capture that square. So again, as I just said, if the sentence is correct or the definition is correct, then that team gets to capture that square with either an X or an O. If their definition or their sentence is incorrect, then they do not get to capture that square, and then the play goes on to the next team. The first team to connect all three across in a row, either horizontally or vertically or diagonally, wins the game. And you can do this a couple times, maybe with the same words, or you can switch it out and put up some new words and give the game like a fresh board, we could say. If you end in what we call, in American English, we call it a cat's game. If you end in a cat's game where it's a tie, it's a draw, neither team has mastered the board 3 in a row, you just want to prepare a couple quick questions as like a tiebreaker. So it could be, again, could be a grammar question, or it could be another vocabulary question, but you could maybe make a list of like 10 tiebreaker questions. And then, you know, the first team to answer it wins, and then you reset the round. So this is a game, again, I think it's best done when you're doing review, and it gives you the flexibility to see kind of how students are doing with not only their definitions, but also, are they using it in the proper context? Are they formulating the correct like syntactical structures if we're using it in sentences? So drawing back to my point about a little bit of informal assessment, this game can provide you with a bit of insight about how students are using the language that you've already taught. Okay, moving on to vocabulary game number 3. This one's going to provide us with an opportunity to participate in the chat. So I'm going to introduce the game. I'll show you an example, and then you'll get to participate in the chat box. All right. So if you are familiar, in the United States, there is a children's TV show, which is called Sesame Street. And when I was growing up on Sesame Street, there was a little song that was, which one of these is not like the other? And it's an opportunity for children to use their reasoning skills to figure out which one doesn't belong. So based on that same principle of that game, that is going to be our game for which one doesn't belong. So objective is, it's supporting our students to find similarities in terms, and also to defend their choice, to defend their reasoning, providing evidence or giving you know, a justification for why they answered in a certain way. All right, we're gonna walk through the procedure of how we play this game. So firstly, at home or whenever you do your lesson planning, you're going to prepare word groups where 3 of the words have a similarity and 1 word is different or an outlier. So you're going to prepare several groups of 4 words, right? So each round, we could think, has 4 words to it. When you get to class, You're going to divide the students up into teams. Next step is you as the teacher, you're either going to project your first group of 4 words, or you're going to write that on the board. You're going to do it one at a time. So the first 4 words. Students have a set amount of time in order to, 1, find the word which does not belong in that group of 4, and they need to explain why is it different. So for this game, they have to have 2 parts. They have to identify the word which is not belonging in the group. And then secondly, they have to give the reason as to why, or the justification as to why their group thinks, or their team thinks, that this one is incorrectly placed. After the time limit is up, you'll do a whole classroom feedback and groups will share out their answers. And then, as I mentioned, teams will score points on correctly identifying the word which is does not belong in the group, and also having a correct justification or reason for it not belonging. Again, this is up to teacher discretion. You can award 2 points per round, or you could require the teams to have the word correctly and the justification correctly in order to get 1 point. So you can decide on how you want to do that in terms of your class. And all right, let's take a look at an example. I'm going to model it for you, and then we'll do 2 examples together. All right, so let's take a look at an example. All right, so I prepared my words ahead of time and I say, all right, students, today we're going to play one of our favorite games, which is which one doesn't belong. Here's your first set of words. You have 1 minute maybe. Okay, so I give them, sticking with our animal theme, dog, horse, lion, sheep. Okay, the students are working. Boom, time is up. Okay, we go to our first group. What are their answers? Oh, the word that doesn't belong is lion. Why did they choose that? Because 3 of them are animals which can be domesticated, and 1 is a wild animal. Okay, excellent. I agree with that. That was the correct answer. They get 1 or 2 points depending on how you do it. I guess one could argue that you could have the lion as a pet or domesticate it, but I would not really accept that answer. I think we can all agree that lions are best being in the wild. So that's, again, kind of an example of where there is a commonality between 3 of them, and then 1 is an outlier or something which doesn't belong. Let's do this together as a group, and I'll have you share your answers in the chat box. So as a reminder, when you share your answers, you should give the one which doesn't belong and also the reason why it does not belong, okay? So we're going to do some practice. All right, so your first set of words, here you go. Toys, food, water, shelter. Okay, tell me which one doesn't belong and why. So remember, some of you are just giving me the answer, but you got to give me the answer and the reason. You got to give me the answer and the reason. Good job, Nellie. Excellent. Okay. Good. Oops, sorry, I started sharing the answers. I clicked my screen. So going to the answers for this one. If you wrote toys, you are correct. The reason is we don't need toys to survive. although maybe our students would disagree, or maybe even some adults, when we think about the essential necessities which we need to survive as humans, we don't need our toys, but we do need food, we need water, and we need shelter. So toys is the one which does not belong. All right, great job. Let's do another practice together, okay? So our 4 words are big, blue, sad, and quickly. And this one, actually, I think there could be 2 reasons that you make your choice, but let's see how we do in the chat. So again, which one doesn't belong and why? Good, Larissa. Excellent. Good. I know I'm in a room with language teachers, so I think this one might be a little easy. Yes, Larissa, I was thinking that could be the second response too. Good, good, good. Different part of speech. Excellent. Beautiful. So remember, those of you who are just putting the answer, we have to put the answer and the reason to get full points. Good, excellent. So I think most of us are on the same page that quickly does not belong, right? So quickly does not belong in the group. And the reason is it is an adverb and the other 3 are adjectives. Another reason which I would accept as a correct score is quickly is 2 syllables and big, blue, sad are all 1 syllable. So you could have actually 2 reasons for this one. One is it's an adverb, that's why it doesn't belong. Second one, it's a 2-syllable word and the rest are only 1 syllable. All right, nice job with that. Okay, and for our final game today, I wanted to choose this game mainly because it's my favorite. This is one that I think is tried and true through a lot of my different teaching experiences. I've used this with children, with adults. I think I've even used this with business English courses, with some kind of older adults that were studying. So I'm going to explain to you again this game, and then we're actually going to watch a short video of it in action, and then we'll wrap it up for today. All right, so this game is called Back to the Board. Some of you might be very familiar with it. Again, it's my favorite game to do. It's great to do, you know, especially if you have those last 5 minutes of class. Students really love this game. So the objective is for students to creatively define target vocabulary words. And let's go through how we would do this game. So firstly, students are divided into 2 teams. One student from each team will come to the front of the room or the front of the class with their back to the board, all right? So they cannot see the chalkboard, they cannot see the whiteboard. Their back is to the board, hence the name of the game. We have 2 students sitting in seats and their respective teams are gathering close to them, all right? So they can hear them. So they're within earshot, they can hear them. Teacher writes a target vocabulary word on the board. So for example, we're sticking with our animal theme. I'm going to write the word lion, or I'm going to write the word lion on the board. When I say go, teammates can describe define, act out, or you can make the accommodation to draw if you want to, in order for the seated person to guess the word which is behind them. So their objective is to guess that word. I like to say that teams are disqualified or they can lose points if they spell the word out, or if they give, kind of a too easy clue, like it is, this word in the adjective form, it's rest in the adjective form. Oh, restful. No, I think they got to be a bit more creative and expressive. So that's a little bit of like a rule that you can add so that students are producing more language and they're not just spelling the word, reading it off of the board. Because the goal is not for spelling recognition, it's more for, defining words and expressing. So both teams are doing this simultaneously. When the teacher says go, both teams begin to explain their word. And the first seated player to guess the word with proper pronunciation wins that round. And you can go for many rounds, as many vocabulary words as you'd like to do. And then you could add more points or give bonus points if you ask the person who's sitting in the chair, again, the person who can't see the word, they guessed it correctly. You could add more points by asking them, can you spell it? Or can you use it in a sentence correctly? So this could be like a moment to get some bonus points, or to give them a little extra challenge. Or you can just finish the round when they guess the word correctly and move them through a bit quicker if you want to get more people sitting in that hot seat, as we could say. And like I said, after it's guessed correctly and you've scored the round, maybe on the board, then the new player comes up and they have two new players and you are going to write a new word onto the board. All right. So what we're going to do now is I have chosen a short video clip of this game in action, because if we were in person and we were doing this in an in-person facilitation, I would be having you actually play all of these games, putting on your student hat. But this game is a little bit hard to do virtually. So I think I'll show you a short demonstration and then you can see how it looks. All right. So that was just a short clip of the game in action, because I thought it was a bit important to show, firstly, how engaged students are with this activity. As you could see, both teams were kind of leaning in towards their person to describe the word. In the video clip, you also saw a lot of students, like especially for the ballet, they were really like using their body and trying to give signals to their teammate. I think even for the word ballet, one of them was saying pink. So it's interesting to see the type of associations that students come up with. And again, they get pretty excited and engaged. And like I said, I've used this with adults and they love it too. It's just such a classic that I felt like I had to include it because it's a one that I use in my toolbox a lot. All right. Oops, sorry. We'll go ahead. All right, so now we are reaching the final moment in today's webinar. And I want to take a moment to think about the different activities that we learned or we reviewed today. And I want you to think about an upcoming lesson or topic that you will be teaching. And how could you use some of those vocabulary games that we learned today in a future lesson? So maybe tell me about something that you have coming up, or if you're already on summer break, maybe think about something that is coming up in September or some type of thing that you are doing in the near future. And you can share that out into the chat box. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. So again, making a connection to what you could do with some of these activities. Also, if you couldn't hear the backs to the board video, I'm so sorry about that. I don't know if it was because the sound sharing wasn't turned on. But if you hop onto YouTube, you can find that video. I'll point it out in my references and you can take a look. So great. It looks like Larissa can use the short sorting game on the topic of vacation. I love it. Good. Thank you. Thanks so much for your kind words. I hope that some of these were useful for you, or at the very least, you could get inspired. Okay, adapting the sorting activity for a poetry lesson. I love that. That's great. You could do that, practicing maybe figurative language, looking at alliteration or beginning sounds of words or imagery. You could make different connections with that. Good, excellent. Yep, great. And just a final note here as we close up for today. If you are interested in more free games, if you want some more, and the key word I'd like to emphasize is free, because we all want free things as teachers, I think. If you head over to the American English website, if you go to this URL, americanenglish.state.gov/resources, here you will find a wonderful resource, which is called Activate. And there are pre-prepped games in this resource, which you can download, I think either as a PDF or an EPUB file. And then you can use those, either project them, or you can also print some things out. So this is a great resource if you're looking for some more games. I think someone in the chat said board games. In this resource, there are some board games that your students can play. And yeah, so you can use this resource as well for board games, but there's actually a few other vocabulary games and just some other discussion things. And this website is, again, totally free. There's a bunch of resources and additional textbooks on there. So do feel free to note this down and check it out if you're interested in learning more about it. All right. So here is a list of my references, and if you did not hear the sound on the video, you can go to YouTube, this resource here. It's the third one down, and it says English for Asia, Back to the Board Vocabulary Review. It's right on YouTube. You can just type in Back to the Board Vocabulary Review. It will bring up that full video. I just showed you a clip, but you can watch the full video and then you can hear the sound. I apologize if some of you were not able to do that. All right. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention on this Saturday. I know maybe some of you are working still in school, so you had Monday through Friday of classes and you're choosing your Saturday to spend with me. So thank you so much for your participation and your wonderful, insightful comments, especially at the beginning of the webinar. And I really hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Miss Madison. That was a very good presentation. Very
Thank
well paced.
you.
So I'm sure everybody could pick up everything that you wanted to share with us.
Beautiful.
And we are very grateful, but the least we can say is thank you so much, and we wish we'd have another session with you in the near future.
Thank you so much. I hope so.
I've actually picked a lot, and already I know there's a part I'm going to use for one of my lessons this week.
Awesome. I love to hear that, Doreen. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you. And for our participants, we are very grateful you could join us. I'm sure you have all seen that it's worth it. We have learned a lot that will make our lessons more interactive for our students, and would also take away some of the boredom of doing the same thing over and over for us as teachers. Thank you so much.